everybody. Thank you for joining another wonderful roundtable this Saturday evening. We have a great discussion today. This is a discussion that I think should happen more often. I hope that these discussions are helping to bring visibility to individuals within our community. But let me just go ahead and introduce him. I'm going to introduce a very strong advocate for disability within the Hollywood community, Spencer. Uh-oh, what'd I do?
Hey,
Spencer,
I'm here.
Hey, how do you say your last name? I just look at it.
Yeah, Frankeberger is how I pronounce it. Frank E-Burger is also acceptable. But I tell people, the fun fact is my mom's maiden name is Argyropoulos, and my dad's last name is Frankeberger. So if I had been hyphenated, I would have been Frankeberger Argyropoulos, which would have been way too ridiculous to spell.
That hurts.
Yeah,
that name hurts. And my name is Mirage. Thrams, people say, but still, that's a painful name to say. I just look at it. I just know you as Spencer, like Cher or Oprah, Madonna.
Yeah, I mean,
Spencer.
I've learned. People tell me I should get a stage name to shorten the name, but I'm like, I think people have to like actually think of my name when they're trying to say it. That I kind of stand out because it's not just like a Smith or a Thomas. It's like an actual they're like you have to pronounce this. Yeah.
Thank you so much for moderating this. And thank you for saying yes. I know that I just asked you out of the blue and you were just like, hell yeah. And then we're going to do this in 2 parts. So I'm so excited to hear this. And I'm going to just turn it over to you and let you introduce your panel.
Great. So real quick, I just want to mention that my name is Spencer. As we've already discussed, I'm currently in the Los Angeles, California area. And for anyone who may need some audio description of what I look like, I just want to let you know that I am a 6-foot-tall white Mediterranean male, so my skin is a little bit more of an olive color. I didn't completely shave, so I got a little bit of stubble going on. Black glasses, short black hair, and I'm wearing a green, like neon green shirt that blends into my beige cream-colored wall. So I'm really excited. Oh, thanks. So I'm really excited. Thanks, Mirage. So I'm glad you said that. I learned this. It was really exciting. So I'm excited to introduce this panelist tonight. And I also want to point out that I'm the only he/him tonight. So we've got a lot of great perspectives, which is really cool. And I'm excited to introduce everyone. Oh, and I forgot to disclose, I'm happy to disclose I have Coats disease, so I have partial blindness, eye contrast partial, which is why the visual description being spoken is very beneficial for me as well. So I'm just going to jump into it. I got a lot of great questions for our panelists tonight. And I'm going to introduce you in alphabetical order by first name, because that's how I wrapped it around my brain. And Mirage will just pop you in, and we'll just have you say your name, your location, the description, and if you're willing to disclose. If not, no big deal. And then we'll jump right in. So first one I have is Allie Waxman.
Hi, I'm Allie, or Al, whichever you prefer. I'm fine with either. For those who need an audio description, I have long, curly, red hair. I've got dark plastic framed glasses on, kind of the same color as my hair. Very pale, no makeup on right now, and that's basically all you can see is my face right now. So that's about it. I'm in the LA area right now, but grew up in the Ventura County area, so I've kind of been hopping back and forth. And my experience with disability in Hollywood lies with my autoimmune disorders. I have some autoimmune disorders that cause me chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And I also have a couple of immunodeficiencies, so I get sick easily. And then when I do get sick, it's worse than, when an average person would get sick. So that's pretty much the easiest way to say it all.
Great. Yeah, glad to have you here. Just hang tight. We're going to jump right in. It's going to be a great discussion. Next, I'd like to introduce Diana Jordan.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I'm Diana. This is Jordan. I am a African American woman. I have brown skin, short, kind of wild hair. I am in my apartment here in LA with my butterfly wall. I call one of my companies the Rainbow Butterfly Cafe. So I love butterflies. And my disability is my cerebral palsy, which cerebral palsy mildly affects my speech and my gait. And I am so happy to be here tonight and share the panel also with some other women you're going to meet who are also dear friends of mine. So thank you for having me, Spencer.
Yay, Diana, thank you. I love your butterfly wall. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Great. We'll see you in a bit. Next, I want to introduce Eileen, and I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so I would love for you to say it while you introduce yourself.
Gruba. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Eileen Gruba, and I am an actress and a writer and a producer. I live in Los Angeles. I'm on my phone, so I don't know how much you can see behind me. There's a tree. It's a little dark in here. I have blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm 5'8". That's my description for you. I'm wearing a tank top right now because I just worked out. And my experience with disability comes from being paralyzed from the waist down when I was a kid. I am now what you would call a spinal cord injury walker, and I'm a cancer survivor. So that's my stuff.
Great. Thank you so much. Can't wait to see your perspective this evening. Next, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Kretschmer.
Hey, I am Jen Kretschmer. I am a writer, producer, and actor, as well as a Twitch streamer. I'm very active in the tabletop gaming community, and I'm creator over there. I have red hair, brownish eyes. I'm wearing a little bit of makeup. I have a black shirt on with lacy short sleeves, and behind me I'm sitting in a gaming chair, a black gaming chair, and behind me is what looks like a magical forest because I have a streaming setup. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and a number of associated conditions, mast cell dysfunction, POTS. So I'm also an ambulatory wheelchair user. So I have chronic pain, chronic fatigue, joint dislocations, and a bunch of other fun things that come along with having a wonky body. But I'm so happy to be here and having this conversation.
Great, and I'm glad you're here. I know that we, fun fact, Jen or Jennifer, I don't know which one you actually prefer.
Either or is fine.
To a workshop that I did back in January for blind low vision actors, Access Acting Academy. They have virtual classes. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Sign up. It's awesome.
And I think that the feedback that Jen provided was really great. And so I'm really excited that she decided to come tonight to do this.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yay. So we'll see you in a bit. All right. And finally, last but not least, we have
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Joy Mamie. I am a comedian, actor, writer in Los Angeles, California. I sing too, but mostly for jokey ways. My description is that I am Lebanese, so I have light. You could also call it olive skin. I call it hummus colored skin.
I love that.
I am wearing a black shirt, and my hair is short. It looks, I think it's brown. Other people would say black, but it's my new growth. It is short and got a kind of fish. I don't know, not a fish, but a wave on top. It's my first time with short hair, so it's there's all these new phrases I have to learn. But yes, my experience with disability is that I am a very recent cancer survivor. I have just last month and a half, maybe 2 months, time is a construct, have found out that I am officially in remission from Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you in a bit, Joy. All right, great. So those are our panelists for this evening, and I want to mention that if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to type them up. We should be able to see them on our end, and I will get to them as many as I can tonight, and hopefully we'll answer your questions before then, but if not, go ahead and feel free to, as you're watching, put those questions in the comments. Now, I want to bring back all my panelists so we can get this going. Said we're gonna, and again, as I said, we're gonna do this. I feel like I was taken off and then I put back on, so I kept talking. We're going to do this very popcorn style, so I'm gonna ask a couple of questions. If you have anything that really speaks to you with this, feel free to jump in, and we'll go from there. So the first questions I have are specific to what your definition of certain words are, specifically disability and accessibility. And I just want to speak on that first. Anyone wants to start? What is your definition of disability and or accessibility?
I'll jump in if you're going in any uncertain order. My definition of disability, after so many years of advocating and hearing so many people give their point of view on it, my definition of disability is any physical or mental condition that alters your daily functioning, where you need to function differently than the average human. And my definition of disability in entertainment is anything perceptible that would give people a reason to exclude you just based on them being able to see or hear or notice your
Great. I think that's a great definition. I think it's very important to also understand the entertainment aspect. There's a whole different ballpark, and that's what's crazy is that even though people assume they know what disability is, it's such a broad range, and there's so many elements to it that we'll get to that later about either you are or you aren't. There's a whole wide spectrum, and I think that that's something we'll talk about. But anyone else want to give a definition of disability or accessibility?
Well, to me, accessibility.
No, go ahead, Diana.
To me, because I would agree with Eileen's definition of disability, but I think accessibility is about opportunity. Having access in terms of there are many types of there's literal physical accessibility. If there are stairs to an audition, you are not given that opportunity to go to the audition, not because of your talent as an artist, because it's inaccessible. So it's about there's physical accessibility. I think there's attitudinal accessibility too, especially in this industry. If a casting director does not see, or anyone, a producer, whatever, does not see the viability of somebody with a disability playing any type of role, whether, especially the non-specific roles, that's another type of accessibility. We're denied that opportunity to even audition because of attitudinal. But I think there's physical accessibility, and then there's attitudinal accessibility in terms of how you define disability and what your because that definition can impact the accessibility an actor with a disability has to audition for a role.
Great. I actually, Danny, you bring up a great point, because one thing that I remember someone saying is, I don't know why I have to play a blind doctor. Why can't I just play a doctor?
Right.
And I think that that's something that's really important and powerful to think about is, why does my disability have to be the reason I get a role? So I think we can also, if we want to maybe popcorn off of that, and if anyone has anything pressing to say about that phrase that I thought was a very wonderful phrase to think about. If not, we can go on, but if anyone has something.
I just kind of want to jump off of some of what Diana was saying and say that for me, my definition of disability is very much based off of the social model of disability, which is that bodies are different, brains are different. That's normal human variances. We get tall people, we get short people, people have blue eyes, people have brown eyes, and having different bodies and brains is a totally normal part of that variance. The issue comes in when society is not made accessible. When there are not strategies in place to allow everyone to have equal opportunity and equal access to things. And I think access involves a number of different factors. But the key is really kind of thinking about it multidimensionally rather than as one thing. People often, if they aren't versed in disability, think the only thing that access means is a parking spot and a ramp. And that's absolutely not true. It may be how you present material. It may be that you're releasing sides in a format that is screen reader accessible. It may be having an interpreter and not putting the burden of that onto other people. It is your responsibility to be making those accommodations for people.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, I love how you said that we need to think multidimensionally, because that's absolutely it, is that people come in all different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, of, et cetera, et cetera. We are all completely unique. And anything that doesn't fit in this, I'm going to go ahead and start using the word patriarchal box of what is deemed normal, quote unquote, in terms of what people are able to do, be it visible or invisible. The assumptions that are made for people, and if they don't fit those assumptions, it's a very difficult position to be in, and it's very difficult to also have to. And I've been doing it much less in my life. I'm a person who's been through many kinds of surgeries and all sorts of stuff, and then like cancer hit, and that's a whole other world of understanding new limits in your body. But it's very difficult to understand that you have to, that with it comes a lot of education, because other people don't know, truly just don't know how to walk. I was going to say walk in those shoes, and that's a very ableist phrase, and I'm trying to avoid that. So forgive me for being a product of the systemic ways, but
I was going to say, even we're still learning too. I mean, even though we have our advocacy for ourselves, but we also want to be sure that we're advocating for everyone across the board. So I'm glad you actually brought that up, because it is like, even though we're advocating, there are still certain things that we're still learning too, which is great. And I want to bounce off of what Jen said about the screen reader accessible sides. I had a self-tape audition for a pretty big project. And when I downloaded the sides, it was 3 lines of watermarks, not just the usual one. It was 3 lines. And I asked my manager, I said, can you see if they have sides where I can actually read the sides? Mm-hmm. And I know that it's done for the purpose of confidentiality, but I had a really hard time reading those sides. Yeah. And so it's like, and my manager emailed them and they didn't respond back. So I had to figure out how to adapt it so I could read the sides. And so I think that is something I actually want to jump into now. I guess I'll jump a little bit into that. Is obviously everyone needs different accessibility and different accommodations. Is there anything that businesses or companies or even your colleagues can do to incorporate into the industry right now without even thinking about it, or without spending money, without doing anything, something that they can do to just, as simple as what Jen said, screen reader accessible sites? That's easy. Send out a PDF without a watermark. Very easy, because you already have a PDF without a watermark to begin with. But anything else that you want to point out?
Something that everyone can do, right away, that doesn't require any, any items, I guess, or anything, is just hear what the disabled people around you are saying and amplify it. Because like for me, some of the accommodations that I've needed through my life, both in and out of Hollywood, is sick days. Like in college, for example, we were given 3 a semester before we would automatically fail a class. And one of my accommodations through the Student Disability Center was that I was allowed more than 3 days to be sick, because when I do get sick, it's for a longer period of time. And, if I get the infection that's going around, normally I develop like a secondary or a tertiary infection, and, maybe I'll have to end up going to the ER or something. And so it's going to take more than 3 days just for one infection, And for me, accessibility isn't about the way that a lot of able-bodied people see accessibility is they're getting these extra things to help them, and I'm not getting anything. When the reality is we're just getting things that put us on the same level that you're already on.
Yes.
And so they see, you know, leniency with sick days and things like that and think, well, okay, well, she gets all these days to like just play hooky and relax at home, but I'm not relaxing. I feel awful, you know, I'm sick. And so I've had to fight that fight many times. And a lot of the times am not heard. But if one or even more of my able-bodied friends back me up, you know, suddenly that person in charge is like, oh, yeah, of course we will. Yeah, you can just tell us you're sick and it won't be a problem.
Great. Yeah, I agree. And speaking on that, and I think Eileen had her hand up, so I'm going to come over to you. But one thing I was going to say is I've had a lot of eye surgeries as a kid, and the recuperation period was a whole week. So I was literally from Monday to Sunday, I had to like lay down on a couch with an eye patch. And it got really stressful in school when teachers were like, you have to make up all this work on top of the work you have to do the next week. And I got lucky that in 4th grade, my teacher, I had to recuperate during spring break. And she said, you know what? Next week, don't even come to school. I'm not going to count you absent. You don't have to make up anything. Go on spring break. And that was a really cool thing. And I didn't realize as a 10-year-old me that was essentially my teacher advocating for me. Yeah. And now I learn, you know, years later that is what it was. And that was such a wonderful gesture. So I think even as something as simple as that with regarding the sick days, just like knowing that it's not because we want to be out, we just have to be out. And I think that's
yeah,
something.
I mean, do you think I got my first migraine when I was 8 years old, so it's been 20 years. I mean, do you think that I'm having fun lying here in the dark where I can't even open my eyes? No. None of us want this. You know, it's that whole thing where people think, oh, you're just making all this up for attention. What positive attention am I getting from this? Tell me, because I'm not getting any. I don't see it anywhere. If anything, the only thing that I've gotten from speaking up.
You're not in it for the parking?
Yeah.
I didn't even get parking. I want to.
And that's another thing. Like, people talk about parking and you know, Social Security disability as if it's like so easy to get on and all this money, when it's very difficult to get on, even if you have, you know, years of documented disability, and the money you get is less than minimum wage. It's not enough to live, you know, per month, no matter, you know, if you're like renting a room, it's not enough. Right. It's again going back to that definition of accessibility, where we're just being put on the same level as able-bodied people. We're not expecting anything more, you know, we're just trying to be equal.
It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And I think that's what some people don't realize. But I know, Eileen, you had something pressing you wanted to say, so I'm going to throw it over to you. And
okay. So this is in terms of trying to function within our industry and work. And I've been in the industry 28 years. For about 20 of those years, I worked in casting as well so that I could pay my medical bills. And throughout the time that I've been in this career, I've had my leg rebuilt a bunch of times, and then I also went through cancer. So this is the perspective that I'm coming from, where, you know, of course, obviously I book out when I'm recovering from surgeries, but then there's, you know, if I look back on my career, I probably spent about half of those years on crutches and in and out of braces and casts and things like that, literally about half those years. And so what I learned from the perspective of having seen all parts of the industry, having produced, having worked in casting, having been an actor with a disability, having been on the front lines for many, many years fighting for inclusion, I learned something that I think everyone who has a disability who wants to work in entertainment needs to help the industry with. And that is that you need to let them know if you need an accommodation. They can't just assume that they know what every single person out there is dealing with, because a lot of people you can't see and you don't know them, so you don't know that they need special sides or that they need something different, right? And so through the years, because of the battle of having to make my health insurance because I wasn't on disability and because I had pre-existing conditions. So I was always in this battle for my life, being a cancer patient, having to make my Screen Actors Guild health insurance, so having to get back to work. And so as soon as I could reasonably function well enough to do my job, I didn't care if I had to go in on crutches or in a wheelchair or whatever, I went. And so, you know, every once in a while I would have to sort of, you know, hide everything that was going on because I couldn't afford them to take a job away or not give me the job. I needed to make my health insurance. So in one instance, a couple of years ago, I was working on this show, The Politician, and I didn't tell any of them what was going on. I went in, I booked my job, I got it, I'm showing up. I just happened to have been 1 month out of a major surgery. And that was the third in 7 months. So needless to say, I was freaking exhausted. I was just barely able to walk, but I didn't want anyone to know until I was already on the set because I didn't want to lose my job. So what I did was, once I got on set, let the AD know, let the people handling me know that I needed them to either put a chair right on that set so that I didn't have to go back and forth to trailers because I literally was not capable of walking that distance. And the exhaustion level was so high, as you know, when you're coming through surgeries that involve, you know, losing body parts, you're exhausted. And I just literally would plop down on the couch on the set and close my eyes and just try to conserve energy. And I just didn't tell them. I heard one person make a crack about maybe you should get some sleep before you get to set. But I didn't really care. I laughed in my head. My eyes were closed. I heard him say it. I laughed. I don't care because I'm there doing my job, and I know I delivered, and I know I was capable of doing the job. But my point in all this is saying that if you know that you are able to do the job, whatever it is, don't give them a reason to not hire you, because believe me, they won't. I've fought this battle for many years, and the industry is still not as open as we would hope they would be. So you need to convince them you can do the job, but then let them know what you need to do the job. And like we have all said, it's different for every single person here, what we will require, what we need to do the job. For me, it's always just them being understanding about what shoes I wear, whether or not I need a brace, and whether or not I'm able to get back and forth to wherever they're holding us.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think it also comes into, and I'm going to go to Diana next. I think she was next. But it goes into the thing of, you know, it's like, I need like this specific accommodation. It's like, well, we have a ramp, or we have this. It's like, but that's not specific to my specific accommodation. You can't just say we have accommodations, because it is, again, as everyone has said, it's different for everyone. So you may have some accommodations, but are they the accommodations that this person needs? And I think that that's the conversation in general that needs to happen. Is there are places that are accessible for specific accommodations for specific disabilities, but that doesn't necessarily mean across the board things are accommodated. I mean, especially if you have live shows and you don't have an interpreter, that isn't going to help for certain populations. Whereas
yeah, you have to let them know about that stuff, because right. A lot of times they just don't know. And I've noticed that once you get on a set, often they'll be like, is there anything you need? And that's when you deliver, this is what I need. And right. I haven't seen, in the last couple of years, I haven't seen anybody have a problem with it. Prior to these last couple of years, even in wardrobe, but now people are really opening up. They're hearing us after all these years.
Sure. Great. So I want to move to Diana and then to Jen after that.
One thing I did want to emphasize that the definition of a reasonable accommodation, it's not a special privilege. A massage is a special privilege. I can't, even though I love them, I can't get massages on set. I can't get lobster. A reasonable accommodation is a legal term that allows a qualified individual to the equity to do the job. So there's a huge difference. If you're on the set and you don't have access to your trailer, that's a reasonable accommodation because you are there to do a job and you need an accessible trailer. But I think it's really important to understand that it's not, again, it's not special publicity. It's like, I know now in the age of COVID, there's so much more self-taping, and I'm able to self-tape, but there are times that I may need to do it a little bit differently just because of what works for me, because I live by myself. I mean, I had one today where it was too late to call a friend, so I rounded up recording my lines because I had to, because of the speed in which that audition came in. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find a reader in time. It was just what I had to do. But I just think it's really important that understanding that, yes, you may have this standard, but you also have to allow those standards to be bent and moved. And reasonable a reasonable accommodation, and most reasonable accommodations are not expensive. They're not these big expensive things, but they're also legally under the ADA. That's why we have the ADA. So understand when you're making a reasonable accommodation, that is a legal term that allows the qualified actor that you hired to do their job to the best of their ability. So there is a difference, and I really think it's important that we understand what a reasonable accommodation is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It is this reasonable accommodation. Again, I mean, I'd love to have lobster and sausages, but that's not going to happen, obviously, because that's not a reasonable accommodation. That's a luxury. Yeah. And I think that's, again, I'm going to bring back the luxury versus necessity. There's two different terms there that I think a lot of times people kind of combine into one. It's like, oh, this is it's a privilege, or it's a luxury, or it's something that they want, when really it's something we need. I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Yeah, I think that the major thing that I think is the most valuable thing we can do in all of this is to start hiring disabled people. I think we know that there's been study after study after study about the effect and the impact of media representation on, how people approach different groups. It's so important that we start getting not only in front of the camera but behind the camera. Authentic representation and hiring. They did a study earlier this year where there was 97% of rooms did not have two disabled people in them. 97% of the time, if you were a disabled writer, you were the only one in the room. And we're the largest minority in this country, and that's the numbers are not adding up. So that's the first thing is make an effort to do outreach, educate yourself and then start doing outreach. The second thing is that disability we're not a monolith, and it's not binary. You aren't completely one thing or not completely one thing. There are ambulatory wheelchair users. It doesn't mean we're faking it. People may have varying levels of vision or mobility or pain day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. So I think we've never seen that really shown. That's never really discussed or highlighted in any sort of media. So a lot of people don't even know that that's a thing. Like, two of us can have the same diagnosis and have completely different symptoms. Mm-hmm. So I think recognizing that disability isn't binary is a big part of it. But authentic hiring and authentic voices in storytelling, and even down to PAs. Like, how do you expect to ever get disabled producers if you can't have disabled PAs learning? If you can't hire, disabled co-stars, how do you expect someone to go carry a show? Those opportunities will never happen if we don't start bringing people in at low levels, getting them in the room and teaching people so they can move up the ladder, and then they can make hiring decisions and write content or produce content or direct inclusive content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, going off of that, a quick sidebar. This is something that I love that you spoke about, Jen, back when we had the Access Acting Academy workshop, is the idea of disability not being binary, because a lot of times people are like, well, if you can see, then you're not that blind. And it's like, I don't like when people say that, because it's like, am I downplaying? Am I overplaying? And then it starts to, take this toll on me. But I also, when you talk about PAs, I've learned, like, I have a master's in film production, and there are a lot of times where I don't apply for PA work because it says must know how to drive a box truck. And I can't drive box trucks. I can drive regular cars, but box trucks are, because of the way they're shaped and the way they work, my vision doesn't accommodate for that. And so I'm like, well, I'm not even going to apply, because if that's the reason I would get the job and I have to drive the truck, I can't do that job. Or like passenger vans. And I get that that's often the case with a lot of PA jobs. But if you hire 3 PAs and one is the van PA and the other 2 do, like, I have a car, I can drive, I can be an office PA, but having to drive a box truck or a passenger van, it's not something that I can do in general. So now I'm losing out on opportunities because it's becoming an able-bodied job. I'm going to pass it over to Joy, because I know Joy was next, and then Allie.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you just made, though, Spencer. Just in terms of what we not only what we think our opportunities are, we're even allowed to apply for. Like, that is also something that is very straining on one's mental health in terms of what limits people are putting upon others. And I also wanted to go back to Jen's point about how no one is just all one thing or something, or that is so obvious. You brought me back to thinking about last year in October. It was after my second treatment during chemo. I had bought tickets to Lizzo before I had ever gotten diagnosed or anything. So I was going to go to that concert, and I had to be. I had gotten a wheelchair for being in the venue, excuse me. And it was so jarring because people had seen me stand up, because I can walk, but I couldn't stand for long. And there were all of these eyes and these truly, like, cruel things people were saying, of the idea that I'm faking it, or like, I'm not going to move because I don't want to give up my spot, because it's not my fault that you're you're doing that. Like, all of that really cruel assumption. And then all of the shame that comes with having to feel like you're a burden in this situation. And then on top of it being like, wait a minute, I'm going through chemo right now. This sucks. Like, the amount of responsibility that is put upon people who just want to get the opportunity to either work a specific job or have a specific experience. It's so important to really check your assumptions in those moments, and also to think, like, no one wants to have to struggle through a crowd or something. Like, no one wants to be that person to you. It's just, if we can all just take a moment outside of ourselves and outside of our individualism and needs for being right or being the most vital in the world, like, it's very remarkable that there is an extra lack of empathy that I hadn't seen until a year ago that existed. And so it's just, I don't know, just a reminder to really be able to check yourself and check why you're saying the things you're saying.
And you shouldn't have to explain to anybody why you need to sit down.
Yeah.
It's someone's business what you're going through. And if people authentically need the support of a chair, then fine. And it's no one's business why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, it goes back, I think, to never judge a book by its cover. That's literally there for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I think that we kind of, as a society, sometimes just forget that it's like, even though, and I will say, someone I know that's very close to me one day said they went to Wendy's and they saw a young woman had the disability placard, walked up, and they said they looked fine to me. There was no problem with them. And I was like, you don't know. Yeah. And that was and then that person literally said, you're right. I shouldn't assume. I shouldn't judge. Yeah. And so I was glad that they figured it out right away. But it's like that's the immediate, I feel like the immediate assumption of a lot of people is like, they look fine, so they're fine.
And this is why it's so important that people who don't have disabilities don't borrow tags from their mother or their grandma or someone that I've heard all these cases. The people who are faking and who are using things they don't need, you are making it harder for every person who has a legitimate disability and needs support. So if you're taking those spots and you don't need them, you are the problem. Because then everyone looks harder on people with actual disabilities and makes them feel like they have to justify why they need that support. So I'd love to add that to the conversation so that every able-bodied person out there understands why it is so wrong. I've had to explain it to so many people I've crossed paths with through the years. It doesn't matter that you have the tag because of your grandma. It's wrong for you to use it unless you need it.
I completely agree. And I think that that's where in our society there's abuse of that system. And so people just start to assume because there's one bad egg, everyone's a bad egg. Exactly. As opposed to knowing that there's only out of every 100 people, there's that one bad egg.
Well, and that's true of all marginalized communities. Like the burden is put on you to be this exemplary paradigm of humandom. And that if you screw up, it's because you belong to this marginalized group and you're not given another chance. And that is something that desperately has to change. Like people are so shocked because so much of my work is seated in a chair. They don't know. And then they see me at a convention with a cane or on wheels and are like, they don't know how to process this idea that they thought I was normal and now I'm not. But that's where you can open up conversations. But people don't see you as a person. They see you as this fragment of a group. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's good. You actually put some great stuff in the chat that we'll go through. I want to send it over to Allie because I know Allie had something to say regarding this as well. And then Diana, you can go after Allie.
I feel like there's this such a fine line to walk where you have to, hide your disability and act like nothing's wrong so that people will take you seriously, but then also prove that you're disabled enough to warrant reasonable accommodation, which is your legal right, like not anything extra. One of literally the first time that I saw somebody on screen who had the same diagnosis as me was 3 years ago, 2017. And I'll tell you because it's still on Netflix, it's Unrest by Jennifer Brea, and it's about CFS and ME. It's commonly known as chronic fatigue syndrome, but we are making the shift to myalgic encephalomyelitis. And it's a disorder that more and more research is being poured into and that more people are becoming aware of because it's a post-viral syndrome, which means many people are developing it post-COVID. But that was the first time, I was 25 years old, that was the first time that I was able to look at any type of media and say, wow, that person is exactly like me. That's me. And just the fact that it took that long is horrifying. And I mean, the ADA was only, written 30 years ago. Like those, you see pictures of those disabled advocates protesting by crawling up the stairs to Congress, and they put it in black and white so it looks older, but that was 1990. That was only 2 years before I was born, that's not a long time. And I mean, I don't think I mentioned it, so I'll just mention really quick that I am a model, an actress, and improviser. So that's where my experiences lie. And I would like to say also that I had this experience with, this theater community and company that I really, considered family because I had spent years with them. And first it was disheartening because they were casting, using a disabled person as a trope in the play. You know, somebody who like is epileptic but only gets seizures when they have a vision, you know, or whatever. And he's one of those things where it's like, I've seen it a billion times and it's just another way to other disabled people. It's not lifting us up and making us special. It's, you know, it's another type of othering and marginalizing, which is wrong. But anyway, the thing was that they had an opportunity to cast a disabled person for that role, because I did audition, and that was one role that I was up for. But they cast my roommate, who was the same age as me, had the same teachers, you know, had the same number of years of experience, and I had spent more time in the company, but they cast her because she wasn't disabled, because it was less of an inconvenience, because they wouldn't have to think, well, gee, is she going to show up today or not, you know? And I was like, okay, so this is making it really clear to me that you want all the benefits of a disabled person, you know, so you can have your spooky, kooky character who, you know, makes people think, you know, and dig a little deeper inside themselves and be mysterious, or whichever trope you want to use. But you don't want the actual reality of a disabled person, which goes to show, one, that the character that you've created is not based anywhere in reality or in any sort of kind way, you know, and two, that it's not about disabled people or the disabled community. It's just about you, which is not right, you know. There's so many disabled tropes, you know, like the blind girl who can see everybody's soul, and it's ignorant and needs to stop. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that many disabled people are writing those tropes for themselves to be cast in, because I certainly would not. It's not respectful. That's what I'll end with. It's not respectful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, off of what you're saying, it almost feels like that theater treated your disability as baggage, as opposed to embracing it. They were like, oh, this is going to be baggage to begin with, as opposed to, wow, we change, we advocate. And I think that that's what we need to, as a society, train our brains to understand, that it's not baggage we're bringing in there. Mm-hmm. We know what we've got. We know how to handle it. We just want you to accept us for what we are. And I think that that's...
I think every disabled person has had the experience at least once of feeling like a burden, you know, and like, oh great, I'm like unloading my entire diagnoses on these people, and now they're just gonna look at me with those big sad eyes like I'm something to be fixed or something that's perpetually broken. And that is so heartbreaking. You know, that's when I stopped feeling like a person.
Absolutely. Diana, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, so much. But one thing I would love to share is, one of the worst days of my life was when I found out my friend Daniel committed suicide. It was heartbreaking. Two of the best days of my life were the day my nephews were born. They were amazing. I share those stories because that's part of my human story. That has nothing to do with having cerebral palsy. Like, my Asian nephew just got a hamster, because the campaign for a hamster. So now he has just a hamster. And I'm so happy. And I share that because those are my human stories. I chose to be an actor in my REAL life, in my real life, so I could tell many stories in my REAL life. You know, and we have this beautiful cornucopia of images and race and age, and these beautiful sexual preference. We have this beautiful, really wonderful images, and we just want disability to be an integral part of that storytelling. And yes, we have many stories that are capital columns and like the ADA, the president of the ADA, the 504, which are interesting stories to tell about disability history. But then there are human stories that we are just a part of because we are part of the human collective. And I don't like the term thinking outside the box because that makes it seem like we're not part of the box. We just need to realize how big and expansive the box is, and disability needs to be an integral part. If we're truly celebrating through movies and films a global storytelling, if we're truly doing that, disability needs to be an integral part of that image and storytelling in terms of race, and because we are the only minority that also is a part of every other marginalized group. You know, I'm African American. I am now not 30 anymore. You know, I mean, I'm 31. I'm just kidding. But I mean, you know, we all have our intersectionalities, and that's the beauty of film and TV. Is it's a way to celebrate where kids can look and adults can look and see themselves reflected in the storytelling that comes out of the entertainment industry.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I know that as far as like the real versus the disability, I mean, disabilities are real, but also we have lives. Like we exist with, you know, like your nephews and your friend. Like you have these stories. Like I'm a big fan of theme parks. Like that has nothing to do, you know, like it's like we have these things that we all like that are ways that we can tell a story. But not only can we tell a story, we can tell a story with, as you said, Diana, our own unique perspective because we have a different spin that we can put on it. So it adds to it. And I want to actually go into something. Jen wrote a specific word in the chat that I want to kind of talk about. It's the word inspirational.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm acting, you're an inspiration. Talk about verbiage that someone might use and some better verbiage that they could use to make us not feel like we're such an inspiration. Oh, you're just, it's like, feels like almost like our disability is being put on a pedestal as opposed to us knowing we're doing a good job. So I want to know if anyone has any thoughts on the word inspiration and what they might find to be a better verbiage.
I just wanted to say really quickly, ever since I got diagnosed, I am incredibly wise. I am an inspiration. Like that, when you wrote that, that made me laugh so much because, I mean, all of a sudden, I'm a part of this new community of people who have cancer, and therefore, I understand everything about life. And that is, again, such a hard responsibility to take on. And I do find that very interesting that, you know, people just want to. I appreciate to have conversations about my experience, absolutely, but I think there is this expectation of the idea of the model minority in the world of people with disabilities. And how sudden it is. When in fact, for a lot of my experience, it was just living in fear and trying to get through that part. I can't hear you, Mirage, but you look great, whatever you're mouthing. No.
Do you want me to say, is it what you said in chat? I think what Mirage was saying was what she said in chat, which is she gets black women are strong.
Oh, yeah.
Like there are these buzzwords.
Yeah, exactly. Jennifer, actually, if you want to talk about, unless you have something else to say, Joy.
Oh, no, that was it.
The use of framing and language would be great.
Yeah, so I'm going to use a few disabled slurs, just advanced warning, but for people who want to learn, they're important things to know. Words like cripple, that is a reclaimed term at this point, but it is not a term to use in your writing, in your everyday speech. It's just not cool. But if you think about the phrases we use, you know, you turn a blind eye, you turn a deaf ear, the way that we connect disability with negative states of being just day to day just reinforces these ideas that disability is evil, it's something to be feared. That brings up like the disabled villain trope or disfigured villain trope. like you by using these words, you're just constantly reinforcing inability, being bad, being incapable, and it's a real issue. There's a great list that I have a document that I think is going to be linked below that I created basically because I got tired of answering questions all the time. And so this is my here, read this. This is 101, and then we can talk. So it's like Stella Young's TED Talk, which I recommend everybody watch because it's phenomenal. It's called "I'm Not Your Inspiration, Thank You Very Much." So, but on that list, there is a link to a long list of ableist terms and also non-ableist alternatives. So it's really comprehensive, but it's kind of shocking when you start getting into it and trying to unlearn vocabulary. But it's so important that we stop reinforcing those ideas and start shifting language. It makes you a better writer too, to have to think about what you're saying.
Great, and we also have a lot of things that we're going to be pitching and sharing as far as resources, as Jen said. So keep an eye out those for the comments. If not, then the replay, they'll be there for your perusal and your use. I'm going to pass it over to Allie, who has some stuff to say about this whole framing of language and being an inspiration to people.
Okay, first of all, please do not use the terms differently abled, disabled. That's a weird compound word that is just so much. It's just virtue signaling, and it's your guilt. Anything like that. I'm not differently able. I'm disabled. It's not a dirty word, and I mean, part of that is why it took me a while to be able to embrace the term disabled, and it's because of that mentality. And I think that a lot of able-bodied people are kind of afraid of disability because it can happen to them at any time. It's the only minority that they can become a part of at any time. You could step up a curb and get a traumatic brain injury. It could happen at any time. And because of that fear, sometimes when I describe different things that I, have gone through or deal with, people are like, oh, I could never live like that. But what's that telling me? Like, if you were in my place, you stop living. People say, oh, you're so strong, but what option do we have? It's either be strong and get through it, or, just don't live. That's why inspirational is also a little insulting, because it's like, oh, look at that man pumping gas with his prosthetic arm. Like, he's doing a regular everyday thing. He's pumping gas, he just happens to have a prosthetic arm. And what was I gonna? Oh, okay. Nope. Oh yes. No.
Euphemisms.
Sorry, guys.
If you remember, we can always come back
to do. Yeah.
This happens to me all the time.
I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes I have really bad brain fog, and I'm like, yes, no, it's, I'm just kind of wandering around in the dark. And that's like another thing. Like, one of my symptoms is brain fog, where, sometimes it's just like I can't totally wake up and be my sharpest self. And, it doesn't mean I'm dumb. I'm just, having a rough day.
Yeah, if you remember what you want to say.
I know for sure what it is now.
Okay.
I know for sure. It's when, I feel like everybody has seen those posters that has like Oscar Pistorius and then a little girl who's also a double amputee. And it says no excuses on it. Or like, what's your excuse? And it's like, another one of those things where you're putting disabled people on a pedestal and seeing them as this, excuse me, but the term is inspiration porn. Just to feel, you're just using disabled people to feel better about yourself. And that's kind of gross. Like, I don't want to be an object for somebody's use. I don't want to be just a diagnosis. I'm an entire human. I'm an entire human being. That's only part of me and part of how I do what I do. It's not, and it's also gross to able-bodied people because it's like, oh, look at this look at this disabled person doing better than you when they shouldn't be. Like, you're a piece of poop too, you know? It's not healthy for anyone. Whether it's the, you know, disabled person that you're putting up on a pedestal or the able-bodied person who you're saying is not doing enough.
Yeah, it is really despicable how people will use your you know, life and your experience as like ammunition against you. It really is remarkable, like thinking that people are saying, like, I can't believe you would do this after everything you've been through. You should know better. Like, so
Yeah.
not to make two things too personal, but there was a woman who commented on I guess it was somewhat political of a post of mine, and I think Allison's laughing because I think she might have seen this. But yeah, she says to me, she has all these very opposing views of what my post was, and she goes, Joy, I messaged you when you told us about your diagnosis.
I did the bare minimum.
I reached out. How can you be this way?
Which you're probably too tired to even respond at that point, and you're getting 500 messages, and then you get, why didn't you get back to me? And it's like, I couldn't, you know, hold a cup. I couldn't sit up. Like,
yeah. Someone to say sorry.
I totally respond to this specific person, but this is a person who I also didn't have much of a relationship with to begin with. This is a person
that they're holding that up as something amazing. Like, I messaged, okay, you took 5 seconds to say cancer sucks. That's not even reaching the bare.
Yeah, I know. I totally does like, yeah, I know.
Another thing, I had an ex-boyfriend who made it his mission to cure me, not just because, and it wasn't for my benefit. It was he outright said, you know, look, it's not so that you'll get better, it's so that I will have done something fantastic and become rich and famous. And I was like, what? You know, is this some Goosebumps book? This is disgusting. But yeah, I just wanted to add in really quick that it's not your place to make somebody, but especially a disabled person, your project. Because there is no way that you know what we're going through, and there's no way that you know better than all of our doctors how to treat us, you know? And it's also not like sometimes there's not a cure. And if there is, you know, it's not like that's one thing that we're thinking about all our lives, you know? We just live.
Absolutely. And I actually want to share this experience that it makes me think of, and it's very interesting because for me, it was kind of like this, awkward feeling, but everyone else was like, oh, embrace it. And I'm like, okay, but I was getting headshots. And I don't know if people can see my eyeballs, but I have a brown eye, and then I've got this eye that's like cloudy and foggy. It's actually brown, but it's got calcium buildup on my cornea. I think that was why I had an echo because I was so close to the mic. But what I was doing with these headshots is I was at a place, you know, stapling my headshots or whatever. And this one other actor comes and stands right next to me, and he looks at my headshots. He goes, "Oh, dope! You got 2 different color eyes. That's cool." And I literally was like, "Well, I can't see out of one eye. I have Coates disease." And then he goes, "Oh, well, anything to stand out, right?" And
wow.
At that point, I was like, "No, I know he doesn't understand what he just said." But I was like, I don't want to open this can of worms because I don't even know who this person is. But it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, everyone wants to stand out as an actor because we want to book the job. But I don't want to stand out because I have 2 different color eyes. That's not why I want to stand out. I want to stand out because I'm a good actor. I want to stand out because I can take direction. I want to stand out because I've been doing this for a long time, not because I look a certain way. And so I think that made me realize, like, whoa, I don't know how to respond to this. And I think that's something where it's like, I know that person just didn't know. And I think that's where we've all been talking about educating. And like, I'm happy to like give you resources and educate you, but I also think it's not necessarily my job to give you the entire history of disability and what you can and cannot do or say. But giving those resources, I think, is beneficial. And I think that that's something where if you are not sure, one is don't necessarily ask if you don't know if it's okay to ask it. But two, do the research to know what the best way to approach that topic or that discussion if it does happen to come up, and finding ways to make it positive and to make it not feel like, for me in that instance, not feeling like, oh, I'm just being seen as a disability as opposed to a person. Anyways,
that's a big. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a big thing that we have to teach. I'm also an improv teacher, and that's something that's very important to me in terms of making people learn that being, one's having a disability or having a different sexuality or having, being non-binary, that is not a joke. So to choose that to be one's character when you don't identify in, this in a different way, a lot of people have difficulty coming to understand that. And it's the same thing with the idea of casting somebody with disabilities. It's not the person with disabilities. That's not the reason they should be the lead. They should be a human being getting to tell a story. And it's very remarkable that people have a real disconnect with that. People think that being an other means it's a goofy character or it's a, something humorous, when not only is it laziness and disrespect that you're promoting instead. And it's very hard for people to especially in improv, to think, like everything I do is right. Absolutely. I will always say that to people. However, if you're doing something that is harmful to others, then why aren't you doing anything else? Why aren't you doing any other choice that you possibly could in this infinite art form?
Yeah, on that, I want to make a note about the nuance that casting authentically or having authentic crew would have. So, for example, let's say someone was playing someone with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Even down to the way I hold my soda, I hold it very much in my fingertips because the cold hurts, and I hold it, my wrist bends too far. Like, those are things you won't think about unless you are someone who is living it or has lived it. And I think we have a lot of parallels to the journey that the trans community is on, in that we are fighting for authentic representation. We are fighting for inclusion, but also we have situations where there may or may not be medical intervention that's required. And one of the things that is keeping people out of the industry is the lack of secure healthcare. Because when you can lose your health insurance at any moment, it's really hard to take a job. Or to take a career path. So I think one of the big things that will need to happen to improve inclusion is we have to stabilize healthcare in the entertainment industry.
Oh, absolutely. And I was going to say, on a little sidebar, based on what you just said, I did a research thing at one point about the Oscars, and I realized that there have been more actors who have won an Academy Award for portraying someone with a disability than actual people with disabilities being nominated in the history of the Oscars, which is so sad, and it's so creepy that there's this many people that are getting awards for portraying someone with a disability than people who actually have disabilities and actually getting an Oscar nomination across the board, whether it's acting or directing or producing or whatever.
Well, and then you hear about people spending 4 months learning how to hold their body in a certain way, and I'm like, that's 4 months one of us could have spent working on the part. Right. Let us do the work. And instead,
it's only beneficial if you bring people who are authentic in. If it is a purely capitalist, money making idea, then it is beneficial. So and it just ripples out in so many ways, and it's frustrating that people don't see that. When it's anyway, that was all the sentence was.
Yeah, it's not right for me to take one day off because I have to go to the hospital, but it's okay for them to postpone it by 4 months so Daniel Day-Lewis knows how to walk authentically. It's hypocritical. It's a cognitive dissonance because they automatically think disabled equals burden and inconvenience, and that's not the truth.
Yeah, Eileen?
I used to joke about I used to make a lot of jokes about the fact that if this industry didn't start letting me work as an actress with a limp, that I was going to start charging stars $500 an hour to teach them how to limp authentically.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
every time a role came up that had a limp, their response when we would request an audition, their response 99.99999% of the time was, no, we need a name for that role or we can't do the project.
Yeah, and Diane, I know you have something to say. I was just going to off of Eileen. I remember it was, I think, 2019. I'm just going to call it the movie Shazam. I think 2019 is when Shazam came out. But there were 3 movies that came out that year, where a character had one eye in which they were not able to see out of. And I was like, that's such a specific disability in terms of how the spectrum is. And all 3 actors were like big name actors who can see perfectly fine with no issues. And I literally was like, I could have done that without even trying, because that's how I see in general. And I also get a lot, because I was thinking of the Shazam villain was the one who had the eyeball. I get a lot of times of like, you look like you could be a villain in all of your headshots. And I'm like, why? They're like, your eye is just so prominent, you could be a villain. And I'm like, okay, so now I'm being typecast as a villain, which is one thing, but is that what I'm being seen as a villain just because of the way I look? And it's like, it's kind of like that, you know, I wouldn't say that to somebody, but also like, it's again, the education thing is making sure that you know what terms are good to say and what things are not to say. But why would you just call somebody a villain in general? I don't know. Diana, do you want to say?
Yeah, you know, our friend Christine Bruno and several of us know her. She has said disability is a life experience, not a trained skill. You know, you don't, with the exception of maybe the LGBTQ community, where there have been some copycasting, you know, in terms of race, even I have this conversation. The white actor said, I went to the black community and I put on some makeup to try and learn what it was like to be black. We would be up in arms. It would not happen, you know. And yet, when we have fought back, and we are speaking out more, somehow it's not understood on the same level. I believe it was Halle Berry who just stepped down from a role playing a trans woman because she realized she's not from that community. Yet at the same time, there was a movie that came out or coming out with the actress who played in Precious, where a lot of the characters had disabilities. And somehow that's not considered the same, and it is the same. And until, you know, at one time Brad Pitt was on a soap opera, right? He got opportunities to become a bigger name. If we're not given the opportunities to become, you know, to have a bigger name, but we need to be given those opportunities. But again, I think it's still acceptable, although it's becoming less acceptable for actors without disabilities to portray it because they do the research. Well, that's ridiculous, and it's starting to change. I know but not fast enough. But you know, it needs to be as unacceptable as blackface. It needs to be seen on the same level as paint down the blackface. And once we see that on the same level, we call it cripping out. Once we realize the damage that it does and the positivity when they take and go, wow, that looks like me. I remember as a kid seeing characters with disabilities on TV and being crushed when I found out the actor didn't have a disability. And then seeing Jerry Jewell and going, oh, wow, you know. So I think, again, you know, once we start seeing Cripping Up and Blackface and others on that same level, because they are, it's going to hopefully begin to open the door more and more so that we can all, you know, there's a million platforms right now. Well, not a million, but a lot of platforms. there's no reason why representation can't be inclusive in all the shows that we have, the different platforms that we can produce media on now.
Well, and it's financially viable.
Absolutely.
Like, if you start having disabled people in your cast, disabled people will watch that, and we are a huge financial market. So
Yeah.
something like Years and Years, I got so many texts from people going, "Did you see there's an ambulatory wheelchair user?" And just it became such a big deal that everyone I knew was watching that show because we were actually getting represented.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a complex character, and she was a sexy character. Like, it was so wonderful, but it's so rare. So when it happens, we like the audience just flocks to it. And they did studies that show that audiences want that. That's what they would rather have.
And by the same token, I got to be on SWAT and to be a woman in the window, and I had to stare at Sherman Moore all day long on set. So sometimes life is hard.
You're such an inspiration, Diana.
I
love you so much.
If I had to stare at a gorgeous man on set all day, I will for my art. I recycle. But the point is, though, it was a thrill for me to go in and audition for that role where basically elderly woman in the window. I didn't know how I felt about the elderly, but and just to book it and just be the woman in the window. And that was so a thrill for me because it wasn't about just sitting at the window telling someone to be careful. And I loved having that opportunity.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, because I actually want to lead into a question that I think is a great way to potentially end this, because I see Mirage in the corner. But I know that we've talked about a lot of what Hollywood can do to be accessible, or what they haven't quite done to be accessible. But I know we talked about Unrest a little bit, and the experience that Diana had on SWAT. Are there shows or movies or companies that you know that have done it right, or have done something right, like a production or anything that you can think of that has done something right to help guide advocacy or proper representation?
I think it just does it to Eileen and Jennifer. Eileen myself.
Yeah, Diana and I have been in this battle many, many years, so we are finally seeing the ones that are stepping up. But I'll tell you what, it's been stepping stones slowly but surely. We had to, Allison mentioned in the chat about how people thought there were no people with disabilities who had talent. I remember walking into meetings with Danny Murphy, who I don't know if any of you know, he's a quadriplegic, but he was in the battle many, many years ago with me, and he's since unfortunately passed away. But we would walk in and advocate for people with disabilities, and entire room of people would say there are no people who have disabilities who are talented. And I was like, really? Not one? Like, not a single person on the whole planet has talent that has a disability? That's what you're saying? And it's why we started that page that's literally named Trained Actors with Real Disabilities, because I wanted them to understand that there are trained actors who have real disabilities that you can actually hire. So we started promoting the work of performers with disabilities. And anytime any of you are doing anything, please post it and let us put it out there. We'll tell everyone when you're on shows. We'll share it with all the different pages. We put casting notices whenever we get them, which is getting to be more often. But also shows like New Amsterdam and SWAT. And I worked on Watchmen. Nobody made a single issue. They just said, do you need anything? Do you need anything? That's it. And I worked with some incredible showrunners who are very, very aware, and they are very open, and they just need you to let them know. That's it. But New Amsterdam, I would say, is doing it better. I actually used to make a lot of comments about the fact that the medical shows in our industry are so closed off to hiring people with disabilities. Like, we couldn't even get the auditions. And I'll go without saying the names, but some of them on the air for so many years, and all the people I know with real disabilities couldn't get auditions. You know, every once in a while they'd give a token job to somebody. And so, you know, we fought a lot of battles, wrote letters that probably shut us out completely from those producers' offices and casting offices. But this New Amsterdam is the first one. Honestly, it's the first one that just immediately started including people with disabilities in all kinds of roles, not even disabled roles, but they were authentically casting. If the character's blind, they were bringing in blind actors. If the character was deaf, they were bringing in deaf actors. Then they were casting them in roles that didn't include it in the storyline. Didn't. If you watch the show, you're going to see some of the most authentic representations ever that I've ever seen, which is a miracle given that we're talking about medical series. Because one of the letters that I wrote that probably cost me was about discrimination in casting offices on medical series. And I'm like, why would you not be bringing in people who spent their lives in hospitals to play these medical conditions? Why would you not? You know, the reality is, Joy could tell you, once you've been a cancer patient, your perspective is very different on what that battle looks like. And, you know, the chemo brain and all the things that you go through, the fatigue, just even the losses, they're huge. You know, nobody wants to lose a body part. You don't really want to. Yeah. I mean, so thank God New Amsterdam is doing that. Their casting office is incredible. Their producing team is incredible. Ever since they started doing that, and we all started cheering them on publicly out there, the other medical shows started bringing in more people with disabilities and making a point of it because they didn't want to be left behind the curve. So I think the more we cheer on the people that are doing it right and opening things up correctly and welcoming us into their rooms and making it a safe place, I also keep asking them to please make the casting rooms not only accessible to the people who are having trouble getting in your place. You know, a lot of the casting offices, if they're aware that you can't get into their old building, they will set up auditions elsewhere. You just need to let them know. And we're seeing all that happen, and it's beautiful to see, but we need to really root for the people that are doing it and help them raise the bar for everyone else, I think.
Absolutely.
I love that can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like a new life. I love that. You know, I love that you were talking about, I mean, there's so many things I want to say, and usually I pop in and out and all of that, but I just wanted everybody to have room to speak because this has just been such a wonderful discussion on so many levels. This touches so many different areas of our industry, and it's so important. And usually I pop in and I have some kind of like joke and then I pop off or whatever, but right now this is like such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we're going to do it in two parts too, because first of all, you never know the people that are fighting in the background, and those are the people who usually who have put their careers and their opportunities on the line for the betterment of others that come after them. They've already said, okay, this is what I'm going to like just put myself. So everyone on this panel, I mean, just to speak up and talk about these things. Eileen, you were talking about just saying, what do you need? And I'm like, holy shit, that is it. That's all you need to do. What do you need? And that's what we need to do to each other all the time. This is a question we need to ask of each other as people. I'm a cancer survivor, breast cancer, so I don't have my breasts anymore. And that is a loss that was very difficult. I also was hyperemesis. I had hyperemesis, which was only made cool by Kate Middleton. But when I had it, when I was pregnant, I was in pain and in the hospital constantly. And I was in constant pain and I couldn't eat. So I was being fed through a PICC line for almost 10 months. And that pain, everyday pain, that gripping pain, I remember having to prove that I was sick enough or that I was actually sick
Why don't you just eat? Why don't you? And what's wrong with you? And even when with the cancer diagnosis, from the very beginning, I was trying to do more because I had all these other stuff going on. I was going through treatment and trying to be what people expected, and I couldn't think, and I was going through auditions and everything while I'm going through this treatment. So the idea that there is any type of I don't know, like we're giving any type of excuses or any type of leniency, it's the fact that we all have to feel that way sometimes, that we have to hide this or try and put on our strong face, and that we can't just say today is not a day, that we can be who we are, and that my body right now just wants me to take care of it. And that's it. So there's so much I want to say, y'all. I could go all over the place, but I don't want to take over, Spencer. What do you want? Where do you want to go with it?
Oh, I was going to say, I actually, if we could go on a little bit longer, I know that there was something that was brought up in the chat that we're doing that I thought was really great. Is we were talking a little bit about behind the scenes, but Jen had brought up a point about showrunners or producers or any of the behind the scenes people that are either advocates for or are also disabled themselves, that we can look towards authentic representation from those shows and those projects. I don't know if Jen, I know you put some in the chat.
Yeah, Special is completely authentic. The creator has CP and is the lead in the show, and it's hilarious and wonderful. That's on Netflix, and Netflix in general has been making a huge effort to do more inclusive programming for all marginalized groups. They're really trying to get authentic show running and behind the scenes, as well as in casting. But also This Close. I mean, This Close is an incredible show with 2 deaf showrunners who also are the leads. So, you know, when disabled people create content, we get disabled representation from a disabled perspective. And there's such a difference in the texture of shows that have that are able to make jokes without making disability the butt of those jokes. And create drama without it ever being about, oh my gosh, they're going to have a recurrence of their thing, or, you know, they have such a severe incident or such a severe flare that they're going to, might they die? Like that's not how our lives are.
Yeah.
Our lives are, the drama in our lives is our relationships and our jobs and, you know, the things that happen to everyone. It's not about, you know, waking up and brushing your disabled teeth and going and having your disabled breakfast. And like, you don't leave it at home. It's part of you all the time. I mean, for me, that's why I use identity, because I can't divest myself from that. And that shapes every experience I go through, but it is not the experience itself.
Yeah. Also, that's just a good improv right there of just, it's about the relationship. It's about the people and how they interact with each other. It's not like, it's, you know, I always use the trope that we get a suggestion of pineapple and suddenly it's the pineapple scene. Here, you know, let's make some pineapple upside down cake and be pineapples and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, that's not interesting. It's not interesting. It's not good improv. It's why improv gets a bad name. Like, there's just so much more than this base level that we think we have to just keep skimming for some reason.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, you're really right about us needing to get the writers and creators in there. And one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing still is that the big packaging agencies and the companies that are putting all these projects together, the gatekeepers, the literary agents, they're not open to disability yet. The big, and we all need to speak up about this, because the big packaging agents, they won't touch disability. They still won't, except for Peter Dinklage. They won't touch people with disabilities. They're just not reading the scripts. There's tons of people out there that have really wonderful disability inclusive scripts written by disabled people, and they can't get them read. They can't get company to look at them. They can't get Netflix to look at them. So how do we fix that? I'd love for everyone to have a discussion about how do we get the gatekeepers to open up.
Well, they just opened up the blacklist for disabled writers, which is huge. And also the WGA Disability Committee is really trying to make some changes, you know, and Catherine Beatty is running for the board for the WGA. She's amazing. So I think that's one place we're starting to see some progress, because it's also this intersectional approach of recognizing that if we as a community aren't working with other marginalized communities together and multiply marginalized folks to elevate all of us, no change will happen. So we have to team up to make change.
To see people.
The WGA doesn't. You have to have a produced project to get into the WGA.
Yes.
Catherine and all them are doing great things, but I think they only have about 7 writers that are actually in the WGA with disabilities.
It was definitely at least twice that at the meeting I went to. Yeah, it was pretty big, and also the really important part is once they're in the room and can show what they can do, that opens up the showrunners to letting people in, but also as they climb the ranks, they will bring people in. So I think it's not going to be an immediate, all of a sudden the industry is inclusive, but we are seeing the changes that we're starting to see the results of these changes, and that's only going to amplify as we move forward.
Diana, you're up.
Yeah, I was just part of, I'm a part of an organization called Women of Color Unite, which is, I think we have about 1,800 people on our list that's about really specifically looking at women of color, but and our allies. We leave no marginalized group behind. When we just released with the new done by Cheryl Bedford, the amazing producer, we just released a non-white paper just looking at casting of women of color in all areas, be it, LGBT, plus size. So I think there's definitely movement forward. It's never probably as fast as we want it, but I think with seeing that the white picture just came out and the disabled black list, that things are moving forward. And I always see that as positive. I mean, there are times when it feels like we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but we're moving forward. More of my friends have worked in the past year than ever before, and that's really, really positive. Do I want to do more work? Yes, of course. I was a bit came at that when on this panel on the series. That would be terrific. Some of us have been at it longer than as long as some of the other people on this panel have been alive. But there's movement forward and there is progress, and that's really positive. I think we need to look at the positive too. We have a lot of work to do, but we've come a long way, and that's also true, and that needs to be acknowledged, because people like Eileen and other people who've been included, who've been out there banging on the door and not going away. So it's gonna happen because we're not going away. So,
absolutely, we're here to stay.
I mean, no, we're not leaving. So you might as well open we'll build our own doors and make our own table.
Yeah.
Yes.
And on that note, I know that we're going to be doing part 2 of this, so I want to maybe wrap up tonight with all of our panelists. By the way, for those producers or casting directors who said there are no talented people with disabilities, look at this screen right here. This is a small portion, but there's more than 0 here. So there are definitely talented people with disabilities in everywhere. But before we sign off, I want to ask each panelist, and even Mirage too, if people could only take away one thing from this whole hour and a half that we've been talking, what is the one thing you want people to take away from this time? I mean, obviously, hopefully people want to come back and learn more and be educated and come back and do more and share with others. But what is the one thing you want them to take away from today? If you can only give them one thing to take away. And anyone can just start however you want. Just pop one in.
If you're truly committed to telling stories of humanity as in the entertainment industry, if that is your commitment to truly representing humanity, you have to include diverse and intersectional images of disability.
Love it. Love it. That was a great takeaway for everyone. Anyone else have something else they want to impart onto our viewers?
Inclusive, diverse casting is a smart financial decision.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Love it. That's great.
And
mind people. Go ahead, Joy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you are committed to this, like Diana said, it's your job to reach out to people. If you're the person who creates opportunities, create opportunities for people who can. It will only benefit your theaters, your casting offices, etc. And just to remember that, like, forget about the excuses as to why it hasn't happened. We all know why, and it's now about committing to do better in the future.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to jump in there? You don't have to. I just thought it'd be a great way to end this.
Yeah, with all that.
Go ahead.
Sorry. With all that being said, I want people leave this video and think about this to when they encounter disability in their lives, or even if it's a hypothetical, I want them to ask themselves why. If they have a knee-jerk reaction to something like, oh, of course the disabled character wouldn't have a love interest. Take a step back, pause, and ask why, and don't be afraid to dig deep down in that, because we're all taught things that aren't correct and aren't inclusive, and that's not your fault, but it is on you to be introspective and to dismantle those ideas and to learn more and do better than you were given.
I love that. And I also want to say that even someone who's disabled having a love interest is not pushing a boundary. People with disabilities love. We love. It's not pushing a boundary.
And not showing it is actively harmful. I have a friend who was later disabled, and she didn't date because she said, I've never seen anyone in a chair who was successful in love. I literally don't have a script for that. So we have to change that.
Have to change it.
I just asked for that note on a screenplay for a role that someone wants me to play. I said, can you please not be another person who's saying that a woman with a disability can't get a man? Because we can. Yeah. And we can have babies and we can do all those things. So I'm tired of the narrative that if you're a female with a disability, you can't get a guy and you shouldn't have babies.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's all what people either learned or just assume. And it's like we live what is the quote unquote normal, because I don't like using that word, because what is normal really? But what normal compared to society standards, it is like we do things that everyone else does. We just do them in our own way. And that, and so I think that's what people don't realize.
Yeah.
And so I think
wanted.
Great.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a delay. I wanted to say representation fucking matters. And I'm sorry, I'm throwing F-bombs, so I'm changing the whole rating of this, but representation matters. Look, I can't change everything in your life experience, but someone who's gone through that life experience and their voice is so important to whatever project you are. Also, I'm going to say, write real people. Write real people. Everyone that you see here is a real person with real loves, with real desires, real wants, real fears. Write the people first. Get real people writing real people. I mean it, man. I'm gonna mute myself.
And I also want to give a shout out to Mirage, who is a super advocate, if I would say, for not only what she as a person of color deals with, but for every underrepresented group. And that's what I love about Mirage, is that she advocates for everyone. And
I feel the same way about you. I feel the same way. I feel so, my heart is so full for this talk. I don't want it to end. I'm like, what could we like really do? Like, how long can we go before people are like, okay, that's enough? You know, how long can we go? I'm going to put
yes. I want to leave a takeaway too.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot you had
because it's the number one problem I've seen over the last 28 years. Here it is, and this is on all of us. This is a team effort. We are not in competition with each other. We are all so different. We all need to fight for each other, speak up for each other, root for each other, share each other's work, share each other's articles when we're being put out there, support each other, because there's too much in fighting competition through the years, and people succeed in groups. This is a community that has to come together, because we are not, none of us, even if we're in the same category, we are all so different. It doesn't matter. So we need to really root for each other. It's something that's been missing, and I think we've got to keep shouting that from the rooftops as well.
We're so much stronger together. We're so much stronger together. Yeah.
I was just going to say, on a side note with that, is rooting for everyone. I know that I sometimes struggle with this with casting notices. Is it's like character who is blind, and I'm like, okay, well, I could do that, but I maybe need to see, like, are they fully blind? Are they sort of sighted? Are they kind of whatever? But then it says, like, if you're not blind, feel free to submit. And I'm like, I get it, because you want to get like the best actor, but then you're taking away those chances from people who actually live that experience. And I can understand, like, if the role is you bring in every single person that's blind for this role, and you can't find what they're looking for, and you cast someone who's sighted, maybe change it to the character doesn't need to be blind. Maybe they're just a sighted character.
Right.
Yes. Well, and if you have a wheelchair user and you're casting a non-disabled person for one scene, one flashback, one dream sequence where they're standing, I'm sorry, you're disregarding 90% of what that person should be doing. That should be authentic for one scene that isn't authentic. And it's not like we don't have doubles, and it's not like we don't have ambulatory chair users. So there are ways to do these things. Like,
and also that's not Academy Award worthy to give that to someone who is able-bodied. I mean, sorry to continue, but really quickly, just when Diana was talking about it's as bad as blackface, it also made me think.
Yes.
And I don't want to start anything, because I love Marvel, love it so much, but like it bothers me to this day that Robert Downey Jr. got nominated for an Academy Award for doing blackface for an entire film.
For Tropic
It would be like right now in our, like if we said there is a man that's playing a woman, but there's no reason for it. You know what I mean? They're just like here and they're playing a woman, and that's exploiting that character. If you're saying this is a person that's supposed to be a black person, and they're, you cast a white man in blackface, that doesn't make sense. So why wouldn't you get someone who has this experience and hire them and give them the opportunity? Because the thing that we're missing in all of this is opportunity. It's not ability, it's opportunity, and that's it. The gatekeepers, the people that are keeping these voices that could build on each other and create magic, so much more magic than we have out there. I'll mute myself now.
Also, stop making films where the main character meets a disabled person, falls in love with them, the disabled person dies, and then the able-bodied person becomes better. It's just stop making those as tools. It's so dumb. I remember, I don't even remember what movie it was because I didn't see it, but I remember seeing some kind of trailer for it, and it was just painted as this beautiful, tragic thing, and it's neither.
In Me Before You and in $1 Million Baby, it's suicide at the end. It's my life is it's better to be dead than disabled.
Yeah,
and
I'm telling you, it's not.
It's like the theme throughout movies. I'd rather be dead. Like
Yeah.
Again,
Oh my God.
just yourself why.
All it ever takes is one disability for you to figure out you're still going to want to live.
Yes. And for every person who's like, oh, this doesn't apply to me, every one of these talks that it's like it doesn't apply to you. Oh, it does. It applies to you. It applies to every last one of us. And if one of us is marginalized and one of us is kept down, we're all kept down, and you're going to feel it. I promise you will feel it. So you might not feel it right now, and you might not feel it like tomorrow, but you're going to feel it. You're going to get old one day, or something's going to happen. And if you're lucky enough.
If you have glasses, this applies to you. Needing glasses is a disability that has an accommodation that's completely been met, you know, for the most part.
If you can get the flu sometimes.
That's a perfect example of a disability and being made accessible through glasses and contacts. But people don't think of that as a disability because it's been met.
It's Absolutely. Fun to ask people when they make comments about my wheelchair about their accessibility device. They're like, I don't have one. I'm like, you're wearing glasses. Can you function the same way if you take them off?
Right. If I hid them from you, are you okay?
You don't think about putting on your glasses. It's not like if I centered every experience with you about your glasses, then you'd hate me.
Hey, I want to make a quick clarification. I talked about the non-white paper that was just published. That was the Captain Society of America, the diversity committee and the inclusion committee was also a part of that committee. So I wanted to make sure I gave them the proper credit as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing I just want to say, because I just thought of this now, is I have been told multiple times, like if I'm like, oh, I need to stand over here because I can't see what's going on this side or whatever. I've been told, I can't tell you how many times, stop using your blindness as an excuse. And it's very frustrating because I'm not using it as an excuse to get out of something. I'm doing it so I can do what I need to do to make myself be able to do the thing that I need. I can't think words right now, but do the thing that I need to do in order. And it's like, that's just me moving over to the side. That doesn't even affect anybody, right? Except for me just moving. So let me, but it's not an excuse. I just can't see it. Like,
you know, and you were talking about, I think there was something we were talking about massages before. I was trying to get my sound working, but everybody deserves a massage. Everybody deserves everything. Everybody deserves this. Everybody. So, you know, screw that noise. Everybody deserves a massage. That should be something that's required.
I want to get that on t-shirts. Sell those.
They can't be a legal accommodation, but we need them.
Yes, especially now.
It may not be guaranteed by the ADA, but I agree totally.
Do you have anything else, Spencer? I know we're coming up on 2 hours, so I want to make sure that everybody is good. And thank you so much.
Otherwise, I think we'll leave it at this for now. I just wanted to throw out that in February will be my 20 years diagnosed with Coates disease. So it's coming up.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Officially 20 years in February.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. And I'm not that old. So, you know, when I was 10 is when I found out. So you know, it's not that it happens later in life or you're born with it. You know, you can get it at any stage in the game. And it's anything. So, and when I was a kid, it was a lot different than now when I've started to accept it for what it is.
Right.
Because I was different from other kids. But that's what I wanted to say. Let's also say, go for it. If not, I think we can end it here, Mirage.
Okay. I just wanted to, did you want to say, Eileen?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, Jennifer, getting diagnosed and finding the disabled community is one of the best things that's happened in my life. My life is better for knowing that I am disabled and having a group that I can connect with and advocate with and learn from. You know, I think people are so afraid of disability, and the reality is, for me, it's enriched my life so much. I'm so grateful, and I'm so proud to have it as part of my identity. And I want to see those stories told.
Yes.
Like, I want to see the people who are proud of being who they are.
Yes. Life is beautiful. Oh my gosh.
thank you so much for being a part of this. I was not going to have a talk this week, and oh my gosh, this is my favorite. I'm going to say thank you so much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this to my podcast too, because I want the audio of this to be heard. I want everybody to hear this. It's so wonderful, and I appreciate you just opening yourself up to everyone out there, because this applies to everyone. And so we're gonna end it, and I actually have a way to end it now. I know that if you've been watching, you've just been like, I've been like, I don't know how to end these things. I am going to end it with the 3 sentences that I always say. I believe you, I care about you, and I accept you. That's all I have.
Yeah.
I believe you, I care about you, and I accept you. And goodbye. So we're gonna wave awkwardly, or say goodbye awkwardly, until I click on the little button that says end broadcast. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for making this opportunity.
For bringing us